Hi guys, thanks for joining me today in the garage. When we were last together, I had my Egyptian Duoflex bow bound down and ready to take out of the jig, and that's what we're going to do today. A little bit longer episode because we managed to get not only unwrapped, but all the way to tiller in this episode. So a little bit of length to it, but a lot going on. Let's just get right after it, and we're going to get this bow tillered out. All right, so we will get ready to take this guy out of the jig here. I'm actually pretty excited to see how this finishes up. So if we look end to end, those tips are barely sitting ahead of the grip area here. But with the way this was put together, I'm going to be shocked if I end up with tips that are set ahead of the grip to start with. I really feel like there's going to be a lot of setback in this design. Not that I believe that's going to hinder its performance to any great degree, but it is going to be, if I were a betting man, I would say it's going to be set back. Kind of seems fitting to me that it's almost Christmas and I get to unwrap this thing and really kind of see what I've got. Here we are. So yeah, we're going to start with our grip being just ahead of those tips, just barely ahead. But if you take a look, there's reflex along the entire length of that limb. So, as this is actually pretty, it's not very stout, but I would tell you that I feel like right from the start, it feels like it's somewhere right in the neighborhood of a 50 or 60 pound bow where it lies right now. So I will go ahead and get the rest of the rubber bindings off here, get her kind of sanded down and cleaned up, and we will reconvene. Here we are sanded down, so I took all of the glue mess off of the edges here, and you can see that the glue up went pretty well. I got a little bit of residue left down here on this end. The glue up seemed to go pretty well. I do have a couple things though that I gotta pay attention to for the remainder of the build. So first of all, right here at the grip. So I had mentioned when I glued this that I was struggling a little bit to get this bound down with the rubber bands, and ended up binding it down underneath the plastic. So I just did directly onto the glued up stave here with the rubber bands. But that having been said, here is the bigger issue right there. And we're talking full on, I don't know how big that gap is. It's a lot though. I think at its peak, it's approaching a 1/16, maybe even 3/32. We're getting, it's thick, that gap. Here's the positive side of that, however. All of the working limb got a real good glue line. So I'm only dealing with one spot, and as luck would have it, that one spot is in the least strained area of the entire bow, just right through the grip. So I'm gonna have to fill this with epoxy just to get rid of the void. We don't want that void in our bow, or I don't want that void in my bow. And to give a good solid construction. So we'll fill that with epoxy. Other than that, this guy seemed to go together really pretty well. And if you're looking where it kind of looks like maybe both limbs are kind of off a little bit, I think that has more to do with the fact that the grip itself is kind of glued instead of flat, kind of glued up on the one edge over here. And so that would kind of make sense why that one edge looks like it's sticking up in relation to our tips. Did end up with a net deflex instead of a net reflex on this one. So I don't know the ramifications of that just yet, but we will get some string knocks in her because she's already bends pretty well. I don't know that you can really see with my foot, but I got a lot of spring to this already. It's perfect. The amount that I took the belly down and how thin I made the backing seems to have worked out really pretty well for me here. So I think we started right in the neighborhood of where we want to finish. So you can see the shape of our bow here. Have gotten some, well, I got it outfitted with a string, let's say, and you can see the string's just kind of loose, and I've got about, it's just 1 inch shorter than the nocks here. When I string it up on a very short string, or long string rather, you can see that it's just got a little bit of brace height to it, but its shape remains largely the same. So there's very little strain on this bow right now. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and start stretching it out. My initial assessment on it, bottom limb, or what I would consider the bottom limb here, is it's pretty well straight on. The limb seems to ride true with the string, or string with the limb. But this one, I'm sorry, I gotta check out the view in the camera. This one, on the other hand, as you see the string come down, it kind of looks like the tip is, God, I need to get this off of it. See if we can get a good look here. It would appear that the tip is taking off a little bit in this direction. And there's a couple different ways that we can deal with that, right? We can try and true up the limb so it bends a little more, you know, this way, or just take off this edge, come to a thinner tip, and get it trued up that way. So we got a lot of different ways to slice something like that up, but we don't even want to mess with a limb that isn't tracking true just yet. We aren't even at brace height. And so the limbs don't really even, or haven't really even settled into any kind of shape yet. So as the tillering process continues, that's where we start messing with truing up that limb. As we stand right now, we don't even want to contemplate it till we get at least to brace height, and then beyond, and start getting into some of that initial tillering. And as we start that, we just want to make sure it doesn't get away from us, and true it up as we move along, because I'm sure a lot of you can identify, once you start messing with the direction of your limb tips this early in the process, you get on a pretty wild roller coaster and can turn this thing into a pretzel. So no messing around with that. I'm going to go ahead and continue working on a long string and get this guy up to brace height, and I will come back at that time. Well, that was easy. I basically just turned off the camera, shortened the string to just another inch, so it's 2 inches shorter than the limb, and strung her back up. So here we are. Basically, I mean, we're at a pretty good brace height for what we're dealing with here. We'll have more to this riser section before it's all said and done. But as she stands, we are strong. And to kind of give you my initial observations of the tiller, you can see that, and hopefully the sun doesn't get in the way too much here, the bend is occurring mostly right at the base of the limb here. And as we move along, the idea is to get more and more bend as we approach the tip, and so that it's basically accelerating that bend out to the tip until it straightens out. So I think the tiller so far is good. That tip is still, it's actually getting a little more pronounced now that it's running away. In the view that we're looking at, the tip is running to the right from the grip. Right. So our twist at the tip is still there. It is not magnifying, however, which means to me, at least as I'm going through this, that it is, well, what do I want to say? It's kind of set in place. It is not getting any worse. There you go. It's just not getting any worse. So that is one that we can correct really pretty easily just by narrowing the limb on the appropriate side and bringing it true. All right, guys, hopefully this is a little better view than I would get in my garage. Still a lot of shadow, and I apologize. We are drawn to about 18 inches right here, and you can see the recurves are starting to come out of the limbs. Doesn't appear to be a whole lot of strain through the main portions of the limbs, although I can tell you that there is some good bend in there. Maybe we can kind of eyeball down the length of that limb and kind of see some of the arc going on there. So here's my problem. At about 20 inches, she's drawing about 23 pounds. Now, ordinarily, I would extrapolate out the last 8 inches to be, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2 to 3 inches or 2 to 3 pounds per inch, right? And so with 8 inches left to go, we could count on about 16 or 20 more pounds, which would bring this to about a 40-pound bow. The problem is the way the design is put together, it shouldn't stack at 2 to 3 pounds per inch at the end of the draw. It should only actually pick up 1 or 2 pounds per inch. I may be dealing with a 30-pound or real light 30-pound bow here. Not sure. And shortening the limbs really isn't in the cards when you go about recurving. So either my thickness is just a little too thick, which I don't think is really the case. I should have gone a little wider in the design. Ended up losing that width, if you'll recall, when I accidentally trimmed one of the limb pieces too thin, or too narrow rather. So done very little tillering. Actually, I've done just a little bit of tillering on this limb right in this area, which, as it turns out, is the one that was twisting. So I tried to work a little bit of that twist out at the same time. Net result is that the twist has stayed about the same. I think as we get to final tiller, I'll just address that in terms of either hogging it into place by twisting it during the break-in process, or just thin down that limb tip so that it tracks properly, which is likely the way I'm going to go. All right, I've got her set up here in the vise. Try and get a little better view on what's going on with this limb tip here. As you can see, or hopefully you can see, or start to pick up there, that string pretty much bisects the lower limb right through the grip on up through the upper limb. But as we approach the very tip, that tip kind of dives out to the right. So we've been battling this entire time. So you can kind of see it take a turn right there. But the string right now is pretty much straight. You can see how it tracks right through the bow. if you can pick it up, and I don't know if you can, but I have let in this particular knock a little more than the other side. All right, and so what I need to do at this point is we're just going to take in this edge. So this part where it looks like it's taking off this way, it's going to finish in closer, and by narrowing the tip only on the one side, we will bring the entire works back into line. Now I'm drawing at 26 inches right now. At 26, it's pulling 35 pounds. Again, extrapolated out, if I got 2 to 3 pounds per inch for those last 2 inches, should come out right near 40. So I'm doing a little better than I initially thought, but I'm not getting very many pounds at the end of this draw. Just as a note, from 35 to 36 pounds is 25 to 26 inch draw. So I only gained like just over a pound in that 1 inch of draw in that spot, which is exactly what this design is supposed to do. So can't be disappointed with that. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and take this off and I'll come back and show you guys. And as a side note, when you're laminating up, when you're laminating a bow like this, 9 times out of 10, if not 99 times out of 100, this scenario is caused specifically in the glue up. When you glue and strap everything down, you give it just a little bit of a wave at the very end. Nothing to panic about. That's the key, is just not to panic. Go ahead and work through it. Get it settled in. If the wood grain's starting to settle and everything's good and that twist remains constant, that means as the end of the construction comes, all you're going to do is narrow your limb tip against the offending edge, and you'll come right into line. And so when we narrow the opposing tip to match this one, we'll just narrow it on both sides, straight in on both knocks, and everything will be, you know, good from there, because we want to get those limb tips as narrow as we can and still be functional. You know, that's why you want to leave your limb tips just a smidgen fat in your initial layout, give you enough room to work this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take down this edge right here, guys, and I'll bring it back. I'll show you the lineup, and we'll get this thing all the way out to 28 inches. Okay, guys, so just to kind of give you a feel for the shape of that draw, or the shape of the bow on the draw. There it is, pulling to 28 and actually even down to 29. But I'm going to get you right up on that scale so you can see where this hits, and hopefully you'll be able to see the reading on that scale. Here we are to 26 pounds, 32, or 26 inches, 32 pounds. Oh, it locked on me. Shucks. Here we go. 26 inches, right at about 32. 27, right at about 34 to 35. 28. 36, just under 37. Hopefully you could see the readout there, guys, but what that tells me is that we pick up very little draw weight at the very end of the draw, which is exactly what this bow was designed to do. Unfortunately, left me a little light. What this tells me is that we can go with a much shorter design, number one, because this thing basically went straight to tiller. I mean, I did not do much tillering at all. I did the one shot on the upper limb, just to get some bend out a little further there. There was no tillering to this almost at all. So really good tapers to begin with. Can I give you a nice shot of an oil spot on my driveway. Here's the limbs are tracking weird, but here we go. There's that limb twist for you. It's basically eliminated at this point. Oh, as a matter of fact, I think I'm showing you the wrong limb. Here we go. This is the right one. Because it is still there just a little bit. Kind of tough to see with my thumb in the way, sorry. But for all intents and purposes, tracking pretty doggone straight. So I'll be able to take down just another probably 1/8 of an inch off of this one edge, and we'll be right on track there. So tillered to full draw. No major issues to speak of. Really, wow. I mean, there's like very little stress to the limbs in this design. I mean, it just, I took it out of the mold, basically put a string on it, started tugging on it until I got to 28 inches. Just exercised it slowly. I've probably been at the tillering process here for about 2 hours, and that is it. And truthfully, all it was truing up that one limb tip, taking down a little bit on what I'm going to determine to be the top limb, and then just a full exercise with each extra inch of draw. It picks up very little weight at the very end of the draw, so I think the curvature of the limb, or the reflex, quote-unquote Duoflex on this is, I think it's working as far as getting a really smooth draw. So yeah, I guess from this point, guys, I am going to finish out the grip. I'm going to put a little more on there, do a little peeking and tweaking on this guy, and we'll be shooting it in on the next episode. So be sure to join me next week, and we'll go through the wrap up on this one.